Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America website, thisweekinamerica.us. Thank you for joining us on the program. Back with us on the show, author Patti Zona, author of the new book, Little Cottage House, Revolutions and Revelations. You can step inside Patti's little cottage house and get a glimpse of her journey. Falling down, getting up, rising and overcoming the obstacles that life dealt her. Life was challenging even when Patti was growing up. Still, she persevered, found her gifts and talents as a way to express and a release in her life. She was compelled to write, to enlighten, inspire, and awaken the consciousness, to regain dignity and real reason and purpose, to be recognized through knowing the truths in our experiences. The first book in Patti was on This Week in America to discuss it, The Value of a Homemaker. If you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, the YouTube tab there, you can find that particular interview. On this interview today, we're talking about Little Cottage House, the newest book, Little Cottage House, Revolutions and Revelations. Patti, welcome back to the program. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Looking forward to the discussion of the book Little Cottage House, Revolutions and Revelations. Let's talk a little bit, and this is a continuation of the first book, and just to very briefly recap the life that you had, and you really didn't think life was going along very nicely. Didn't think that was going to have dramatic changes. Never thought that you would see a time with financial struggles. Let's talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about the Little Cottage House and the significance of what this has meant in your life.
Well, you're right. After the divorce, I my life totally changed. But I never ever thought that it would be so uh, extreme.
Yes.
And I thought for sure that it would get better. And I thought the courts would protect. But then I realized, and now I realize even more, when you had, well, my husband was in banking and he was top man of US Bank, then that's a lot of power, that's a lot of control. And I, I just, things continued to get worse. And I ended up having to write a book, and that was The Value of the Homemaker, because my role, all the successes were built in our marriage. 28 years is a long time, three children. You have to have the perfect condition to be very successful. You have to have the support, the encouragement, and the patience, and everything that goes with. And you are both mother, father to your children because your husband's never home. Or if he is home, he's working or whatever. The thing is that after my divorce and when I sold my house, even, I'd never bought a house before. This little cottage house was the first house I ever bought. But I had built a house, which was wonderful. But, seeing how things changed, and it seemed like there was always a desperation in transactions and things that were not quite done um, openly.
Yes.
And so it was always a surprise when there was a big problem, and it was always about money. And I just, I bought a wonderful condo. It was a beautiful condo. I was on the 20th floor and overlooked the lakes, Lake Harriet, Lake Calhoun, Lake of the
Now
Isles,
you're in Minnesota at this point.
Minnesota. Yes, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And and I felt that I felt very safe there, but I didn't feel like I was in the real world because I had a heated garage, so I never really knew how cold it was outside because I go from my condo on the 20th floor to my heated garage, and I go outside, and then from my, unless it was really really bad, but I lived there for over 6 years, and then they had a tremendous amount of, well, it became very expensive. It was like over $900 just for the association dues every month. And that's when I learned that Merrill Lynch had not put the sale of my house money into my condo. He put it into everything else and lost it all. and lost most of my financial security and all of my money that I was to use on a house when I bought my house.
And Patti Zona is our guest on the program. That's PattiZona. Her website is very simple. It's PattiZonaBooks.com. The book we're talking about is Little Cottage House, Revolutions and Revelations. The first book, The Value of a Homemaker. You'll learn all of the struggles. Nothing was ever easy. You're at this point you talk about in the little cottage house where, and a lot of people think, okay, you went through the divorce, you've got a lot of money, the wealthy divorcee, which wasn't the case at all. So you're facing now that, okay, I'm in a place that I really can't afford. I need to find something. And this is what, October of 2006, when you're in the market where you actually bought the little cottage house. How difficult was it to make that? It's the first time that you bought. So why did you decide to buy this particular place? And then the difficulty in even doing that?
Well, there were several reasons I bought that house. First of all, I only had a month to move. And second of all, this little cottage house was close to my daughter, and she was having her second baby. She would be having cesarean, so I wanted to be close to her to help her. And I was a little house, and I thought, well, it's not going to be very expensive. The taxes will be low. Turned out the taxes were very high because it was Minneapolis, and my taxes kept growing and growing every year. And the thing is, they didn't disclose the problems. I paid a lot of money for this house. I paid, shall I tell you? I'll tell you, $470,000 for a house that was like a fixer-upper. Anyway, I ended up buying it. I didn't realize that it was a fixer-upper until I actually moved in. And believe me, it's really hard doing a closing and the moving. Thank God for a few friends that could help me, but I had to do the closing and the moving myself. It was not easy, and
Yeah, and you're on the clock at this time, so there's a time crunch. You need to get this accomplished.
That's right. I had a month to do everything, to pack, and the real estate agent said, "Well, I will." And I said, "I didn't think I could do it, first of all, and I didn't think the people that I bought the house from." But right away, everybody was ready to do this, and it was like, okay, once I say I'm going to do something, I feel obligated to do it, even though there were some big questions. But I thought, well, I didn't realize the problems that were abounding in this house. It was one thing on top of another. And so it made it very, very difficult. And um, the agent, Jane Paula, she didn't address this. And in fact, she wanted me actually to to stay in my condo and then buy this little cottage house. And I told her, I said, no, I wouldn't do that because that's foolish. It would just be like a matter of blocks away or a mile away, mile and a half or two.
Right.
So, I mean, that would be a foolish thing. But I learned that real estate agents, and that was the thing to do. People would offer these transactions in desperation. They were desperate. I mean, everybody was desperate. And I was trying to recoup my losses from Merrill Lynch, is what it was. And I thought I could do that with this little cottage house. And instead, I ended up putting hundreds of $1,000s into this house to make it habitable. And then on top of it, I paid high taxes. And the government didn't even consider the fact that Merrill Lynch had taken the sale of my house money without my knowledge, without my address.
And this was all part of the divorce settlement, correct?
No, that wasn't the settlement. That my divorce settlement was I had maintenance. I had a certain amount of
So
stocks.
this was your money that basically you lost
Yes.
in this process.
They took when I sold my house that uh, Merrill Lynch talked me into having the putting the money in Merrill Lynch. And I told him, I said, I'm just going to put it in the bank because he said, well, you'll have a higher interest rate if you give it to us. And I said, well, I know that, except I don't want any penalties when I take it out. He said, that won't be a problem. Well, I had never bought a house before. So when I bought this condo, he never put my money down, my down payment. I don't even to this day, I still don't know how they didn't question, why aren't you putting money down when I had the money? But he did the transaction or something, and I just so I was living there for almost seven over 6 years. That explained why my mortgage was so high. It
Right.
was like, oh, this is very high. And then plus getting $900 a month. And then they would do special assessments, for windows. The windows cost me $36,000, even though I just moved in there. $36,000 is a lot of money, but then they would do like, oh, $5,000 for this, $7,000 for that. And, I mean, it was like a money pit.
And
It
all
was
of this
beautiful.
is in Patty's new book, Little Cottage House, Revolutions and Revelations. Patti Zona, our guest once again on This Week in America. And that's PattiZona. The website is PattiZonaBooks.com. Information, you can land directly to Patty's website by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Information there on the first book, and we had her on the program and talked about it, The Value of a Homemaker. You talk about hidden agendas caught you by surprise, and it seemed like whatever you were dealing with, somebody had a hidden agenda. And I know you sort of like to warn people about this and get them prepared for the unexpected, because this happens a lot in real life, doesn't it? Where you're on one page and somebody else is on a whole different page.
That's right. And it's perfectly, um, it's not, it's not legal, but if the government or the Supreme Courts makes rulings that they can, the people that cause these problems, especially if they are a big company, a bank, a big bank, it's got to be a big corporation. If you're a small company or an individual, you would not have any recourse, or I never had any recourse. Even though when I would talk to the state, I talked to people in the SEC about what had happened to me, and they would say, "Oh, that's terrible." Well, what company do you work for, or what corporation? And I said, "Well, I wrote this in my book too." I said, "Well, I don't work for a corporation, but I write books." And they said, I thought they'd be impressed. Instead, they were like, "Well, we can't help you." I said, "Well, why not?" "Because you are an individual. We can't help you. If you were a corporation, then we could." But so
Yeah,
I was,
sobering news when you get that presented, and time is going by way too quickly, as I knew was going to be the case in talking about Patty's new book. And so, what do
oh,
you started off? You thought this would be a solution to your financial problems, a safe haven, and suddenly this is like an endless flow of money, a flow going out.
out, definitely out. And the thing is I was trapped. Nobody would listen to me. And Jane Paulus, Edina Realty, wouldn't listen to me. Robert Pilter had a talk with her, and he said that she apologized. I said, "Well, I didn't hear from her," and he says, "Well, she apologized to me, Edina Realty." Well, you know that they have a history, and it's I. What was the other thing that you said? I'm sorry. I
Well, yeah, it's just interesting that you thought this was going to be a solution. This was going to be a change in life. This was a safe haven. This was going to be where I could spend a number of years, maybe even save a little bit of money along the way. And that turned out not to be the case. And that's all in the book, Little Cottage House, Revolutions and Revelations by Patti Zona, our guest on the program. I know one of the reasons that you enjoy writing, and you've written about the problems in your books, The Value of a Homemaker and Little Cottage House, is sort of being able to inspire everyone when they go through life to question authority, to challenge, and to challenge themselves. So it's sort of like a warning, right, to sort of look behind the curtain when you're in a situation like this.
Well, that's right. I mean, we are taught to trust and to and you believe that the people that are in these positions of power would be more honorable, be very bright. They would have more foresight and to see beyond. But the problem is everything became about the revenue, the bottom line, and because the money was becoming so big in corporate America and Wall Street and banks and Merrill Lynch's, and then real estate got involved when well, trying to find ways for everyone to have a house, but it was just a game. It was a trap. They were allowing people that didn't have any money, that never ever owned a home, but encouraged them to buy houses, and yet they couldn't afford it. And it was the taxpayer always that that bailed out the banks that were. It was all of us that we were the solution to their
Right.
problem.
We were there to clean up the mess when it was over with. That it needed to be cleaned up, and we were there with the brooms and the dustpan and picking things up. I want to talk about where you are today. And, well, in fact, I used the word perseverance in the beginning. And if you were to sum up your life in one word, that one word probably would be perseverance. You've gone through some difficulties and came out the better for it. Talk about that, because there's so many people struggling, and where do you get the perseverance from? And you'll find a lot of this in the book Little Cottage House. But how difficult has it been as you would face almost insurmountable odds from time to time, that to come out a better person because of it?
Well, hopefully I have. I think I get my moments, but I think I really have a strong faith, and I believe that we are here on this earth for a reason and purpose. And it's not just for ourselves. And that's why I wrote, because I thought these experiences were too important to ignore. But I persevered, but I tell you, it's still constant. And I feel sometimes like I'm trapped here. And it's a lot of work. And the only thing that I can that I feel good about is that my little cottage house is beautiful. It it's but it's not it's time that I leave my little cottage house. There's too many memories and too many things that continue to be part of things is that is going to constantly cause problems for me. And I needed something different, and I feel like I'm trapped here. So I guess my experience isn't over yet, but I'm still going to persevere regardless.
Got about a minute and a half left in the program. And Patti Zona, our guest, the book is Little Cottage House, Revolutions and Revelations. Information at Patti's website, pattizonabooks.com, PATTIZONA books.com. Go to our website and you can link on directly there to Patti's website. One thing I'm sure that you've learned in this process is to be very careful on the next move. How are you going about evaluating, okay, it's time to move on? Closing the chapter, the book actually, on Little Cottage House, and finding another place.
Well, when something takes too much of you, when it's constantly taking more of you, and then and it all everything around you you can't appreciate anymore because there's one more big obstacle.
Right.
And I don't want my life to be filled with problems and complex. I need to focus on what is happening. I did have my last grandchild, and she was born with EB, which is butterfly children. And that caused me to realize how dysfunctional life is, where things happen that is so beyond our control that takes just throws it's worse than what happened to me, because we don't know what to expect day to day. And but so it just goes to show life happens, And yet these problems keep getting bigger and bigger, and the people that have caused, they don't care. It's still about the revenue. It's still about the money. We've lost our conscience, and we it's like we don't really want to hear what's going on around us or know, but we all are in this world together.
It's a very
So
interesting and a motivating story. Little Cottage House Revolutions and Revelations, as Patti has talked about, persevering and how you go about persevering and put things in proper perspective and learn and go forward and be prepared as you're going forward and learning how to ask questions, the importance of responsibility and accountability. You'll find it all in the book Little Cottage House Revolutions and Revelations. Patti's first book, The Value of a Homemaker, is also available. All these books are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and, of course, at Patti's website. And that's Patti Zona, Zona, books.com, PattiZonaBooks.com. And you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly to Patti's website. Patti, it is always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you so much. We'll stay in touch, and hopefully the next chapter in the Little Cottage House is one that goes very smoothly and life is enjoyable once again. Thank you for being with us.
thank you.
You're listening
You're a
to...
very nice man.
Thank you. I enjoyed having you on the program. The book is called
Okay.
Little Cottage House Revolutions and Revelations. Patti Zona, our guest. Information, of course, at our website, thisweekinamerica.us.